All right, Your Honor.
There we go. Today we're going to meet in a special session for one particular purpose, for the purpose of renaming the Huntington High School football field in memory of Coach Tony Rhodes. But before we do that, we're going to have our invocation and pledge of allegiance led by District 1 School Board Member Steve Ryle. Hang on.
Would you pray with me? Holy Father, we come before you this day as we begin a new year. And Father, we realize over the last couple of years, we've endured many challenges and things that seem like they were over our head in many ways. But Father, you've helped us persevere and we're moving forward. Father, our main concern is for the education of our kids, that we can keep them in school and face-to-face learning so that they don't fall behind and so that they'll progress and give them the opportunities they'll have in society and in the workforce. Father, we pray your blessing on this board and this staff as we work together this year. Let us do so in such a way as for the progress and the betterment of our kids and our system. Through Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Time for roll call. Okay, very good. Before we get to our lone motion of this special session, I do need to read this disclaimer. The Caddo Parish School Board welcomes your input and comments regarding items that are on the special session agenda. If you would like to speak regarding an item on today's special session agenda, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then make your remarks to the entire board. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. A time clock on the monitors and screens will help you to be aware of your time. When the time runs out, your time is up. It is the board's policy not to respond individually to members of the audience. When appropriate, the board may refer concerns to the staff to be addressed. As this is a public meeting, we ask you to refrain from referring to personnel by name or incident. In accordance with school board policy, derogatory statements about or directed at a school board member, any employee, or any other person shall not be allowed. Thank you. Agenda item number 1.05, the renaming of the Huntington High School football field in memory of Coach Tony Rhodes. I recognize Board Member Dottie Bell.
Okay. Move to approve the renaming of the Huntington. What I do? Nobody came up.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, move to approve the renaming of the Huntington High School field in memory of Coach Tony Rhodes.
Do we have a second?
It's on there.
Ms. Trammell?
A second.
All right. All those in favor? We'll take a vote now.
Discussion.
Very good. Motion passes unanimously by those present.
I need to move to adjourn.
Having dispensed with that particular item of business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this special session.
Mr. Chair, move to adjourn to the next meeting.
Have a second?
I'll
Mr.
second.
Little?
Yes.
All those in favor, vote please. Okay. Now we're going to executive committee work session. We've already had our invocation and pledge of allegiance. However, we do need to take a roll call of the executive board. Well, it's not pulling up.
You've got to log into the second meeting. You've got to log into the second meeting.
There we go. Okay. Now that we have, you're not up yet? Okay.
Well, it's just executive.
It's just executive committee, yeah.
Would you call? I'm going to call him down. To pay for Chardonnay McDonald.
All right,
Mine's still not up.
Still- we're having trouble with
Come up this time?
Donnie's.
Come up? I did that, okay. Mine's been slow. Oh, okay.
There we go. It should be popping up.
Change it up. Okay.
There we go.
Do you-
Are we good now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now is the time for presentations, and we're going to have Dr. Gorey defer to Chardonnay McDonald, our Director of Communications, for our presentations this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Nations. Good afternoon to our board and our community members, and Happy New Year to you all. Before we look ahead to 2022, we will reflect on our past year through a special presentation with our very own Superintendent, Dr. Gorey, as he presents the annual State of the District Address. And following Dr. Gorey, we will be joined by our Chief Financial Officer, Jeff Howard, to present on millage renewals. And wrapping up our presentations for the day will be Mr. Cedric Floyd with Data Center for a brief presentation on redistricting. Gorey?
Thank you very much, Ms. McDonald, and good evening and Happy New Year to everyone on the board that I hadn't already wished a Happy New Year. Again, this is an exciting time of year as we begin the new year and really embrace all of the possibilities that this new year will offer. I do believe we thought that when we concluded the 2019 year that it was a unique opportunity. I think when we concluded 2020, we knew that it was a year like no other, and I think most people would probably describe 2021 2021 as a year of certainly many new experiences for us as a school system, us as people. I do think, though, even in the midst of that, some incredible things did happen in our school district. And it's just my pleasure tonight to present some of those great things that happened, but also to really look forward to those opportunities that we have as we move into this 2020 calendar year. At this time, you know, one thing, and I compliment Ms. McDonald and her team for doing a really good job of telling our story and through video. So what we're going to do this year is we're going to start off with a video. I'll then do a small PowerPoint presentation around opportunities, and again, then we'll have an opportunity for board members to ask any questions that you may have. So at this time, Ms. McDonald will play the video. I think, Darla, you have that?
2021 was a year to remember for Caddo schools. The district reached an all-time high graduation rate, set the pace for student academic accolades, and saw its incredible educators highlighted on the national stage. Saying goodbye to 2021, we continue to show what it means to be Caddo, even as we battled an ongoing pandemic. To guide the district through its pandemic response and revitalization, in May, the Caddo Parish School Board adopted the Big Dreams Start Here strategic plan. This plan sets expectations to address lost learning while also raising the bar on services to support students and families. Speaking of those services, one critical area of Caddo's new strategic plan is student wellness. Focusing on the holistic needs of students, Caddo launched a top-rated social-emotional learning curriculum for more than 20,000 district students. This mental health conscious initiative allows our students to learn coping skills and resilience in a way that supports our children both in and out of the classroom. In addition, Caddo expanded its work with the nationally recognized Community in Schools program, now in place at 10 district schools, and also partnered with dozens more mental health agencies in our community to provide real-time services to students and staff.
Our district has a wonderful social-emotional program, and the children have really been able to get involved with. The teachers play videos, they do lessons, and we get a certain number of hours each week of social-emotional learning. And because of this, we see improved relationships with other children.
Moving from mental health to physical wellness, Caddo cut the ribbon on its 5th school-based health clinic in 2021. The Walnut Hill Elementary Middle School Clinic provides access to primary and preventative medical care, allowing students to conveniently receive treatment to keep students well and in the classroom learning. Speaking of Caddo's classrooms, several educators received worthwhile recognition at the state and national level for all they do for students. Captain Shreve's Carrie Loradams was named a Louisiana Teacher of the Year semi-finalist, while Caddo Career and Technology Center's Gary Weiss won a $50,000 prize from Harbor Freight as part of a national program highlighting exceptional educators. And who could forget, 2021 was in many ways the year of Marco French. The Queensboro Elementary principal and his story of perseverance won Mr. French the title of Louisiana Principal of the Year. Inspired by his work, Disney surprised him with an all-expense paid trip to Disney World with his family and $20,000 in investments to the school. With so many incredible teachers and staff members, last fall, Caddo was proud to announce the Caddo Hero Incentive Plan. The second initiative offered to employees since COVID-19 began was designed to recognize and reward the efforts of staff. The Hero Incentive will provide up to $2,500 per eligible employee. Targeting student needs, our academics team worked with nearly 2,000 district teachers to provide intensive training designed to directly address each student's unique learning needs. Caddo also gave students and teachers a kickstart to the school year with a 2-week summer program designed to reinforce learning. So while our teachers and staff continue to go above and beyond, it's because they love our students. And when it comes to Caddo students, we know they're kids you just won't find anywhere else.
The real leadership is when you help somebody or do a nice deed and just contribute to the world and help other people become better.
In 2021, we introduced Louisiana to Luca Mikaberidze, a high achiever with enough talent and aspiration to carry him into any career field. It was no surprise that he became the elementary statewide Student of the Year. Beyond that, 6 students earned perfect scores on the ACT, making Caddo the only district in North Louisiana with a student, let alone 6, to score perfectly on the college preparedness exam. Solidifying Caddo's status in preparing students for their future, 17 students were named as National Merit semifinalists. The district once again was named a regional leader. All of this work to ensure the district has the highest quality resources and employees led the district to receive its highest graduation rate to date, 82%, an increase of more than 20% over the past decade.
Here at Caddo, we have done a great job in building relationships and preparing our students for graduation. At Huntington, we have taken great strides in building relationships and motivating our students to graduate, not only do well in high school, but also after they leave us. We have increased our graduation rates by over double digits every year for the past 3 years.
There is so much more to highlight from the past year, and 2022 will no doubt have incredible stories to share as well. Regardless of what the year has in store for Caddo schools, we're ready. Because we are Caddo.
Certainly, always my pleasure to highlight the great things that are happening in our wonderful schools this season. And again, thank you, Charnay McDonald and her team for the amazing capture of our story through video. You know, one thing I want to do as I go through the presentation, again, I will go quickly so that we have time to answer your questions, but I do want to, of course, reiterate some highlights that I think are really significant that were in the video that I think are worthy of saying again. And I think one of the biggest is the adoption of the Big Dream Start Here strategic plan. I remember when I started this work 8 years ago, that was one of the first charges of the board, was to develop a strategic plan, and we did develop our Reimagine Caddo plan, and we implemented that with great fidelity and saw great results from that. If you'll remember, our goal was to just do a revamp, just some tweaks, and continue to grow with that plan. However, the pandemic totally changed that conversation, and really proud of the work we did to totally recreate that plan that meets the needs of our students today, with certainly equity and the equity work that we're doing as the center point of what we're doing. I think when you look at the fact that we are a district with 17 National Merit semifinalists, as well as 6 students that scored perfect scores on ACT, and that we are the regional leader in both of those areas in our region. I think when you look at the fact that we are the only district with a perfect ACT in our region, I think that's something to celebrate, because again, I promise you, God gifted children in every community. I do believe, though, in our parish, it's some of the work that we're doing with some of our highest achieving students that is making that measurable distance and getting them to those perfect scores. Really excited to again to be have our presence when we talk about those elementary students of the year with a winner of that Louisiana Elementary Student of the Year. As well as, of course, you know, as the video said, no one could forget the year of Marco French and how well he's represented us, not only on the local, state, but also on the national platform, and really highlighting what we're doing for children, and in his situation, doing for children of poverty, of great poverty, and really has highlighted that work that we're doing. You know, I think it's also important, though, that we remember, though, that we are still in the midst of a pandemic. And so a lot of these things that we've done, we've done in the midst of a pandemic. And I think it's important to note, and, you know, I love Mr. Rao's prayer when he talked about the importance of in-person learning. And I think that the research is clear. If you look at the performance of students in systems that were back in person versus those systems that remain virtual, is that gap from an achievement perspective is much better when you're in person, and that's even more significant when you're dealing with children of poverty. So I do think that with us being a system of 70% of our children being raised up in homes of poverty, it's important that we continue to stress doing everything we can to remain in person with our wonderful teachers. You know, I do think it's important to note that even in the midst of a pandemic, we achieved the highest single-year surplus in decades, and I think that certainly complements our financial team for their accountability as we went through the pandemic. But I do believe that just the uncertainty of what tomorrow holds, and I think we all feel that way most days, I think it created a sense of urgency with us to make sure that we were as fiscally responsible as we could be, and we saw great results, and certainly our charge is to learn from those decisions and continue to make those good decisions for the taxpayers of our community. Of course, investing in competitive incentives and stipends designed to recognize and reward our employees. I think, you know, we use this term hero around these supplements, but I think it's so important because truly the people that took those risks, I often talk about those cafeteria workers who early in the pandemic put their lives in danger because we didn't know what tomorrow held, and stepped out and actually went into schools and served meals. When I think about the teachers who, despite their fears, masked up whatever they had to do, went into the classrooms and did those things that were necessary so that our students could continue to learn. And that's something that this board should be very proud of, because that's something that certainly was a direct result of you using those resources in that way. And we do look to continue to support and reward our employees at every opportunity that we have. Really excited about the continued implementation of a one-to-one device deployment. If you were to look at where we were in March of 2020 when we exited the buildings, we're in a very different place today than we were. We have since added over 17,000 devices to our school system. I remember early on when we bought the first 5,000, we just bought them. We had no idea how we'd pay for them, but we knew at that time that that's something that we had to do. And it's just almost chilling to think about the things that we have overcome in the last 24 months. And again, we will continue to build upon that and continue to do everything we can to ensure that all of our children have access to technology that's necessary for them to be successful in school. And of course, we'll speak to the providing high-quality meals to all of our students. Really proud of the number that we've talked about several times about the 700,000 meals that we served from March 2020 up until the beginning of until we returned to school. But even more excited about the number of meals that we provided last year in the 2021 year, and also the fact that now at every one of our schools, those meals are provided at no cost to families in our school system. A couple opportunities, if I look at our district, and a lot of this work when we look at opportunities, because I do think it's important that I spend my time looking at those things that we can improve upon as we move forward. But I do think if we look at the big picture of district opportunities, accelerating student learning to address those achievement gaps and lost learning will continue to be important. I do think how we gather data and how we gather data and expertise to guide our long-range decisions will be important. I think there are some realities that we have to face around population declines, and how we take information that we're gathering and make sure we're utilizing that to make the best decisions will continue to be important. Of course, ensuring stability in financial resources to support district operations will continue to be important as well. And I'll hit on these a little bit as I go through each of our divisions and just highlight some of those opportunities. Now, and again, many of these opportunities are things that our strategic plan is designed around addressing. If we look at our academic division, I do think creating a long-term plan to ensure high-quality learning environments is critical. We are a school system, and very proud of being a school system where we have a belief that every child has a right to be taught on grade level in a highly functional classroom. I do believe at the same time we create those intervention plans so that students, when they may not be ready to perform at that level, we're supporting them, but we do make sure that all of our children are taught on grade level with a Tier 1, high-quality Tier 1 curriculum in an environment where they can be successful. Enhancing student learning opportunities across content areas and programs, very specifically looking at what are those things like our advanced placement programs, what are those career technology opportunities that we can develop for students, how can we make sure that we're at the leading edge in those areas. implementing professional development to support teachers and staff. The job and the work of a teacher today versus, I say, 10 years ago is so very different. When you only look at this from the perspective of technology and how that's influenced the work that teachers do, it's so very different. When you look at a teacher being told that regardless to where this child is, from an assessment perspective, we're going to teach them on grade level, the work is so very different. So it's important that we continue to develop and implement those strategic supports so that teachers are successful, as well as developing our unique action plans for schools based on their strengths and their challenges. If you look at our theory of action, which is around empowerment based on performance, it's important that we do design those specific action plans because not only does that allow us to provide those autonomous opportunities in our higher performing schools, but it allows us to reallocate resources so that our schools that need more support have that opportunity as well. Looking at our human resources division, the first opportunity, of course, is around the area of reducing certified and classified vacancies. We've made so much progress over the last 5 years in this space. The pandemic totally changed that conversation. I think one of the news stations this morning actually was talking about the huge reduction of students that are either going into nursing programs or teaching programs at the college level. So this is a problem that's national, but again, we do look to continue to work towards reducing those as much as we possibly can. Now, I think when you talk about employing people, you also have to talk about retaining those persons. In that respect, increasing professional development opportunities, specifically around growing people and retaining people, will remain one of our human resource opportunities. Improving employee morale. I think that oftentimes, if you look at where our staff and our teachers are, I think that there are a lot of people that are not in the very best moods about work and about where we are in life. And I do think it's our charge to continue to do everything we can to provide those opportunities where people can be as happy and can feel as supported as possible while at work. Truly do compliment our staff, though, because I do think 99% of our people accepted the challenge and they're working through it. But there are some morale issues, and we do acknowledge that. And of course, last thing here, I think is really, really powerful, and I think Ms. Woolfolk and her team are doing a great job of really evaluating all positions for effectiveness to ensure job descriptions are aligned with our district priorities. When you look at declining populations in school systems, it's important that when we are replacing a job, we are certain that it's essential to the priorities of our district, and that's something in a space where they are spending time every day, even to the extent of redeveloping job evaluations to ensure that they too are aligned with what we expect out of those employees. Our financial division, of course, big challenges there is addressing declining student enrollment. I think it's no secret that we're losing over 1,000 students a year. We saw that same level of decline last year, and just to kind of, speak to the money of that, if you're losing 1,000 kids a year at about $5,500 in MFP dollars, you're talking about $5 million. So how our financial division has adjusted around that has been incredible, and I think we've done a really good job of adjusting around that. But we are not a system where, even though we may be creating surplus situations, this is going to catch up. So it's important that we continue to address and be aware of those student declines. And we do look forward to bringing the board later in the spring some very specific information as it's around future growth and opportunities for growth within our whole parish. Maintain revenue sources to ensure stability in district operations. Long before I sat in this seat, and long before many of you sat in your seats as well, our leaders set up structures in which our system could receive the funding from the community that we need. We have not asked our community for new tax since I've sat in this seat, but we have asked for renewals. In fact, you'll see a presentation tonight around a renewal, and again, this is simply supporting the system that our four leaders set forth for us to manage the school system. And of course, when we speak about efficiencies, reviewing and implementing strategies to support efficiencies, Mr. Howard and his team does an incredible job of questioning everything. And again, this is really only about us ensuring that we are as efficient as we possibly can be. looking at our operations divisions, and we're looking at things that we know we will face as we go into this year. And the first one is around something that not only are we facing, but they're facing within many industries, and that's addressing the supply chain issue, which has created difficulties across many of our divisions and across our community at that. I look at one example of that. Of course, the first one that you think of is our food issues, and that there are some supply chain issues with the food, and that we have to make those modifications so that we can make sure that the food is available for children. But also, one that I think is even more interesting, or as interesting, is that one thing I'm very proud of is that the school system, we have transitioned to all air-conditioned buses some 2 years ahead of what our schedule was. But we have buses now, brand-new buses that we have bought, that are sitting on the lot because they don't have parts to complete the warranty work to release the buses to the school system. We have buses in our fleet that are sitting because we're waiting on parts. So this supply chain issue is certainly, again, not only a concern within our school system, but our country. But again, this does create a unique opportunity for us as a system. Continue to determine the best future uses of offline facilities. We do know that, and really do compliment Mr. Greer and his team, as well as our Building and Grounds Committee, for really staying on top of that. But that, too, will continue to be a conversation as we go into this school year. And, of course, maintaining the process to operate and maintain facilities that average age of 76 years old. Last school we built was in the 1989, and that's quite a few years ago. And again, there are unique challenges and a lot of costs associated with operating older facilities. What I'll tell you, though, as we get ready to roll into the school year, we're incredibly encouraged because we know that academic excellence for all children will continue to be the defining mission. We had made so much progress, and I can't tell you the number of times that we've almost shed tears that we did not have the opportunity in the spring of 2020 to test our students to show all the growth. But again, we're just as committed to continuing to see that growth as we work towards what's best for children every day. We'll remain focused, of course, on safety of students and our staff at our schools. Feel very comfortable with the setups that we have in place today, and of course, we're always open to any concerns or anything that we can do to ensure that our sites are safe for our staff and students. Of course, investing in high-quality teacher and staff must be a top priority. I often talk about a book, the fun little read that I had. It's called "If You Don't Feed the Teachers, They'll Eat the Children." I do think it's important that we invest in our teachers and make sure that our teachers are fed and that our staff is fed with those things that they need to be successful at work. And of course, last, we acknowledge that we're in the midst of change, but know that we, especially this board, is resilient and ready for whatever lies ahead of us. I think we all would define that as unknown, but again, we stand committed, and we know enough, and I tell people, we know enough now to where we know that we have to continue to push forward and learn to live with life as it comes. Thank you, Mr. President. That does conclude my presentation. Of course, we welcome any questions from anyone on the board around state of our school system.
I have some comments, but I'll defer to my other board members first. Let's go to Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Dr. Gorey, for doing such an outstanding presentation, and those who helped you with the presentation. It's always pitch perfect. There's a lot of great information in there, and I think it's fair and balanced. I think there's an awareness of the issues that we're facing. I'm particularly drawn to the fact that there's an interest in investing in teachers in terms of professional development and making some improvements in terms of morale. What I did not hear was a discussion about exploring teacher incentive pay. I mean, I know we've done a few things in terms of hero supplements and that sort of thing, but is there any discussion about maybe raising teacher pay to ensure retention and to draw new talent?
Absolutely. In fact, there's an ongoing conversation around our pay of not just our teachers, but of all of our employees. We did a study, and this predates me, and it's probably 2010 when Romberg and Stovall came in and did the pay adjustment study. That study is dated now. In fact, we have daily conversations around, is it time for us to do some type of, to redo that salary study so that we can ensure that we are paying at a competitive rate to keep people in our seats. So yes, sir, it's an ongoing conversation.
Okay, good, because I just feel like there's a lot of externals that may come into play, and, I think many of us have had some interesting discussions with paraprofessionals, and when you look at their hourly pay, it may be $10 to $12 per hour, whereas places like Amazon are coming in the community
pay
and
more.
offering $14 an hour with benefits. So we may start to see a vacuum, as we compete against coastal companies that have a little bit more robust offerings.
Right. And what I will say to that too, and I think even when we speak to the fiscal responsibility, it's so important that as we continue to build upon, one thing that Mr. Howard, cautions us on is that a surplus year does not mean that that's going to happen every year. There were so many factors that went into creating that. But again, being as fiscally responsible as we move into that salary schedule, because and I'll be very transparent, one of the things that slow you down is that the second you know, you got to do it. So really making sure that we're in a fiscal place so that we can do whatever it requires. And we know it's going to cost more, so making sure that we are in a fiscal place to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Little, is that?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rochelle?
Thank you, Mr. President. Right sizing and keeping the district in the right position. What discussions or plans do y'all have long range, or have y'all had any? I heard you mention that y'all are working on something. Is there anything that you can share today?
So I think when you look at size of district, what we're doing is, today you will hear a presentation from your demographer as it relates to reapportionment. The staff also is working with a demographer that's really working around what will the district look like as we move forward in the future. Looking at what are those, if you look at from a regression model, how many building permits do we have? So how many will we probably have as we move into the future? If you look at the regression model around change in populations, what will those future populations look like? We look to present something to the board that looks at that as far as 5 years out, if not even farther in some areas. And when we do that, that's going to help this board as we look at how we're working through our long-range planning committee around what do those future decisions look like as we make sure that we are right size as a system. I think it's important to note, though, even as we've worked with this external, and I think we did provide you information recently on the demographer, but as we've worked with this demographer, the demographer has come back several times and said something that we've heard over and over again. And I remember when we did our accreditation with advanced ed, that this school system is really 3 systems in one. If you look at where Mr. Rao's district is, it's really a rural school district in many parts. But then if you look at the inner city, it's as urban as the day can be. But if you look at your district, Mr. Rao's, it's a suburban system. So there are some unique situations that are created when you have a district that is so diversely populated. But again, our demographer is working closely with us, and I think that's going to be one of the most fascinating presentations you'll see.
Well, one of the things, and this is something you and I discussed probably within the first month that you were here. I don't know if you recall this or not. And my example was, it would be like a family that has 3 or 4 older cars in their driveway, never knowing which one's going to start or if any of them are going to start, but they've got 4 of them. And so they go out and they just start turning keys, and they just become sinkholes for money. So it's always pouring money into those. And one of the part of that discussion for so many years ago was for us to possibly look in areas for consolidations, and pick a school and just totally revitalize it, make it the best school it could possibly be, so that we could take 2 or 3 schools and move them into it. Because the cost to operate, and I know it ranges greatly, but I'm assuming that any facility we have in keeping it open, I'm sure costs probably close to $1 million a year just to have the facility open. And that's kind of a question right there too, by the way, back there. I'm staring at Mr. Howard.
Not that much, but close to it.
Okay. So, when we look, I just think that there's a possibility there for for us to look to, and this could be possibly build a new school. And I've had this discussion with Ms. Bell for 15 years about building a school out in Greenwater in that area. And I don't know that that's, that's going to happen or not. But if we were to build something that was just a premier campus, I sincerely believe those that were leaving schools that may be consolidated in it would go, well, I'm perfectly fine if you're going to take my child out of this facility and put them into a facility like that. By all means, please do. So is that under any consideration?
Well, absolutely. I think what I think the conversation really is, and we've tried this several different ways, and we've had some success, and sometimes we've not. I think when we talk to staff, though, and staff really talks about this a lot, because there are some concerns when you're losing anywhere from about $8 million a year in revenue. But I think as we look at this, our goal this year is to really provide this board with as much information as we possibly can as we look to what we do in the future. I think that with diversity, I think you run into what we've seen, and as we assess it, is that you run into some of those same roadblocks with thoughts around how do you achieve this. I think, if I look at the model that they did in Tyler, Texas, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Tyler, but they tore down every school, and they built all new schools. I think we're a little large for that, but I think that there are some models out there that we need to just equip the board with all the information and see if we can come to consensus as to how do we move forward. I do believe, though, at some point, the dollar is going to drive the conversation, and I just want us to get there before we're in the red.
I think that's pretty much it. What I did like about this, and I'm going to agree with Mr. Little on this one, is that it's the good, bad, and the ugly. You gave us the good, pointed out some of the bad things and some of the ugly things that we're going to have to deal with, and that's what we're here for, is to have those discussions and deal with that, and I really do appreciate that. That's it.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Rochelle. Mr. Ryle.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Gorey, thank you for your presentation, but you mentioned one thing that I don't know if I understood completely. You mentioned we had buses sitting for parts. These aren't the new buses we bought, are they?
We actually do have some new buses that we bought, and I guess what happens is when they go through this warranty process, they have to have, like, say, if something's not the way it should be, or and it could even be some aftermarket parts that they have to put on the buses before they can go out. I know, for example, I'm not sure of this to be, and I'll defer to Mr. Greer if he wants to add something to this, but like, we have to camera the buses, we have to put different things on them, and they're just running into part problems. Mr. Greer, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, hang on.
Nothing to add, Dr. Gorey. You're on point with that. Okay. Now, is Napa still taking care of parts for us?
Yes.
Or are they,
But this is not a Napa, well,
This isn't
I think we do have some Napa situations too. But mostly when we talk about our new buses, these are just sitting waiting on aftermarket things that we have to do before we put them on the road.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
If I could interject right here, we've got passenger vehicles that are sitting on lots that cannot be sold because there's emission parts or security parts or something that will not allow them to be sold to the public because of those very same issues that are now affecting our school buses. So it's not a problem we don't share with a lot of other people, so keep that in mind. Is that all, Mr. Ryle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the presentation that you made and echo the sentiments of Mr. Rochelle saying, it's some great things and there's some things that we should be concerned about. Some tough conversations, I think, that are going to have to be had, and some tough decisions that are going to have to be made long-term when you talk about a decline in enrollment and population and all those things. Something nobody really wants to talk about or deal with, but of course, we asked for this job. But I got a couple of questions here, and especially as we start the school year, and I go back to how we thrived during the pandemic and how in 2020 we were caught off guard with this, but now, it's been something that we've been dealing with for, like going on 2 years. But as school got ready to start in January, and numbers were rising because of Omicron, because it's highly contagious, just about everybody I know have talked to over the last couple of weeks, except me, was positive. And so there was some concern, even a couple of folk voiced some concern to me about going back to school. I was shared their concerns in some aspect, but then I saw the activities over the holidays, and I asked them, well, you were able to do this and that, but now it's time to go to work, it's a problem. And not to be insensitive to that, but just to kind of remind them that they have to take some responsibility for safety themselves. But my concern is that if the numbers rose, if we can't go up, and hopefully they'll be on the decline at some point, but if the numbers rose to a point where we had to make some decisions to do virtual, are we prepared at a moment's notice to do so?
Right.
That's my first question.
Right. If we were to end up in a May 2020 situation, we're much better prepared today to do that. One thing we did as we went into the 2021 school year is that we went to the new learning management system, which is Canvas. We have trained all of our students, all of our teachers have been trained with Canvas. So every school has the capability of implementing that model at the drop of a dime. I do think that it would certainly be some challenges in that, as it's going to always be if you're doing virtual instruction. That's why we do push in-person instruction. But to answer your question, yes, we are prepared. One thing I think we've worked on is that not this, originally when we pushed this out, it was a one-size-fit-all, but I think that we're smart enough to know that our schools are very different, and that how they would implement a home-based remote learning model would probably be the word that we would shift to more so than virtual. It would be a little different at different schools, but it is our sincere hopes that we do not get to that point. And it's also, I think it's important to note the sincere hopes of our principals and teachers too. If you talk to them, virtual or remote, whatever you want to call it, is a killer. It's tough, and we really do not hope we don't have to put our people under that level of stress.
I'm working on that optimism too, Dr. Gurry. My final question is, I noticed you talked about morale, and you mentioned that, you talk to teachers, they might not be in the best, and for a whole lot of reasons. I think this pandemic has just worn everybody out. And so when you speak to trying to improve on that, other than incentive pay, what are some strategies, and are you all still working on strategies to do so?
We are still working on strategies. I do think that it's a tough situation that we're in just because of the magnitude of work that we're requiring people to do. But again, wherever we as staff can do things to improve upon that, we are taking advantage of that. And I'll give you a small example. On every Friday from Thanksgiving break to Christmas break, this building was out covering classes, so because we knew that it would be a high level of absenteeism. So we made sure we got out there and developed schedules, and we covered classes with everyone else. So again, looking for whatever those things are, and we know that covering of classes is one of those things that's a great stressor. Whenever we can identify that, we talk to that from the perspective of what can we do to lighten that load. I do, and I've received, and I'm sure you as well have received so many thank yous for the incentive to hero supplements and incentives that we're doing. And again, I pass that turn around and tell them, no, thank you, because we know that at some point in the year, you've been asked to do something that's outside the rim of your normal day. And this is, certainly not to compensate you for that, but just to say thank you for going that extra mile.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Amell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Gurry, great presentation, and the achievement gap, we talk about that all the time, but what I'm really interested in knowing, since we know that we have a declining population, and as Mr. Rochelle has already addressed, when we talk about great school, making a great school model, what do we have in mind? I mean, which location, which area would we be going into? Are we looking at that kind of stuff to decide on such? Because I know we're gonna one day have to go to mega campuses, whether we want them or not, by closing some of the schools and rebuilding. I know we got great property that's on, at Monica, what is it, Monica J. Moore? Well, that campus, that's a lot of land over there. So we're looking at something like that to build, or maybe enhance.
One thing, if you remember, when I talked earlier about really taking that information of experts and really equipping this board to determine what direction we're going in. I think that's what our goal is now. If you were to ask my staff, and when I asked them, okay, give me the hard feedback, what have I not done? Why is this conversation so tough? And it's really just information, making sure that the board has as much information as you possibly can around why these difficult conversations are necessary. I think, though, if you look at what we're doing today, our goal today is to provide every possible opportunities to the schools that are online today and develop that around that empowerment, around that theory of action of empowerment based on performance, and making sure where that performance is not where we want it to be, that we're doing all the extra supports there. But I do think the redesign of our system, and at the rate we're losing students, a conversation around redesign of this whole system is not a bad idea. But I do think there's a lot of information that we need as a board and as a staff to support that.
Okay, you talked about improving employee morale. One of the things that we've seen happen since the pandemic state that we're in, mental issues, both with our children and with our staff. We're working on building programs to work with that.
Absolutely. Really excited about the work that we're doing for social emotional learning within our elementary and middle school students, because we did adopt that platform that we're rolling out every day to over 20,000 students, where we are looking at, and one thing we know from the pandemic we learned was that we have to build those resilient skills, that level of grit, that determination, those skills that really are hard to teach, but we have to build and instill that in our children so that they are prepared for whatever their pandemic in 20 years looks like. So we are doing that, and I think doing that with a high level of fidelity at the elementary and middle school level. I do think when you look at what we're doing for our staff, I think it's it's not at that level to where it's a tier 1 where we're doing it every day, even though we do have some people that are participating in some pilot programs. But again, when we look at how we're offering services through our EAP program and employee assistance program, we have ramped up all of those efforts to make sure that we're supporting our people where they are. When we look at communities and schools, we've expanded that partnership, so that's more opportunities for students to receive support in some of our harder to support schools. So very strategic about that. Looking at, and thank this board again for the addition of those health clinics and how we're actually utilizing those clinics to make sure we're providing access to high quality health care. And again, as you know, through strategic plan, we will do one of those per year, and doing that that's through our ESSER dollars, supported by strategic plan. So that is a space where I think I look at one of those areas, I'm really proud of the growth that we've done from when I started to today. I think that whole social emotional learning and supporting whole kids is important. And I think regardless of finances, everyone knows that kids suffered going through a pandemic. So really how we support that's important.
Okay, my final question, comment with, we're going to try to reduce certified and classified vacancies. I want you to share with them the young man that we met that was in the program. I think it's at Northwestern, the educational enrollment for him to become a teacher. We were in the staff development center when you all introduced us to them and the program.
Right, call me Mr.
Call me Mr.,
right.
yeah.
Right.
So that they know we have programs that work in getting our children interested in becoming teachers, because we talk about the nursing programs and all the other stuff. But we have programs that we want to make sure that they know we need you.
Right.
And we want you to become a teacher, so that's one that we can share with the people.
I do, and I do think we're pushing that out. I think we've grown our Caddo, our academy, our Caddo Teaching Academy. We've grown that. This number was down to about 50 teachers vacancies, which to say we have 2,400 teachers within an urban community, that's pretty impressive. And this is, and I compare us to urban systems across the country. We're back at that 120 mark, which we don't like, and which is where we started about 8 years ago. But again, if you look at school system like our school system, everybody went back up with vacancies. It's just a drastic decline. If you look at those frontline industries that really had to go out and hit the grid when COVID hit, they're all seeing these declines. But again, there's a workforce out there that has to work somewhere, and we're looking to make Caddo as attractive as we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Travell. Dr. Vinson.
Doc, great presentation. Can you explain a little bit about those simulation scores from the state and as far as grading?
Right. So as you know, there was no academic grading this year. What actually happened was that, the state did some simulation scores. And what they did with the simulation scores, is that, we actually did take the test. So what they did was, they graded those tests, and they simulated based on historic data, looking at what they called a skip-year model. They used that skip-year model where they looked at how kids performed or how schools performed the last 2 years to get an average of what we probably would have scored in a regular cycle. There's so many factors. In fact, we're really pretty pleased with the scores because there's so many factors like who got zeros, like kids that were virtual, how were they rated, to where you can put very little value in the scores, but based on the model and the way it was done, we don't think it just made us look horrible. I do think it pointed out so many growth opportunities for us, and again, because we did take the test and we had the data. So that's kind of the purpose of what that simulation data was about.
Yes, sir. I would just like to say that I'm glad to hear that you're commissioning thinking about commissioning someone to come in to look at teacher and pay from the superintendent on down, support staff and so forth. But I also want to ask staff to maybe look at, due to morale or the lack thereof, incentivizing some of those simulation folks because they feel that they met those marks. And even during the pandemic, I'm sure you've heard that discussion, so I just wanted to put that out to staff.
Right, and we are paying all of our incentives, all of those that were pre-approved. We are using that simulation data to pay out all of those stipends. So,
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Only thing I would like to add, and I'll make my comments very brief. Mr. Little, I'll go ahead and let you go. Go ahead.
Thank you, I'm back. Just out of curiosity, in the data, were we able to tease out achievement for virtual versus traditional? And was there a deficit?
So not with the level of fidelity that we're willing to share. That is an ongoing conversation with our assessment team, though, around how can we, and again, a lot of the data cleanup is, and there's so many national models now that we're looking at to make sure that as we clean the data up and speak to that we have some level of fidelity that it's reputable information. So that's kind of why we hadn't gone there, because we just hadn't had the, I don't even want to say manpower, we just hadn't really figured out how to make it something that's just not very questionable.
So we have an inclination, but we don't have hard publishable data.
We don't, because the problem you ran into is that a lot of our students that were at home never came to test. I mean, regardless of miraculous, Herculean efforts to get them here. A lot of those children just never tested. So that compromises the data a lot.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
And I do think there are some averages that you can run with to speak to that, but I do think there's so many great national, to your point where you're going probably, there's so many national models that have the actual research that's been done intentionally with everyone that was home being tested, everyone that was in school being tested, with them, even looking at time on task versus in school versus home. There's so many studies out there that do pretty much provide the example that superintendents need to really continue to sell to boards and to communities the importance of in-person learning.
Yeah, it's just an interesting question in the sense that if we can maintain high-quality education through our virtual schooling, we may be able to recruit some families who've chosen to homeschool their children and get them back on the books, so to speak, and help
What I will say to that is that what we've seen, and I don't have data to present, I certainly will work on pulling together this data, but we've seen that at the high school level, we can provide a high-quality virtual education. However, do not plan to present to this board a plan to do that permanently in the K-8 space, because it's just too many anomalies with teaching children that I think we would only be doing that to attract student population to our district, and I don't think that's our ultimate goal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Little. Again, the only thing I would add to wrap this up is that, are we where we want to be? Certainly not. I don't know if we'll ever be where we want to be, but we always strive for that. However, on the one hand, I don't want to be accused of breaking our arm while we pat ourselves on the back, but given that, the public needs to know this. We've made these strides in the face of a pandemic and other cultural and social challenges that are almost unprecedented, and yet we still can point to these highlights as this is not just things to make us feel good. I mean, these are verifiable achievements, and we need to be able to go to our constituents and say, hey, the guy we hired and his staff, they're doing a pretty good job, and we have to answer for that because this is taxpayers' money. I mean, whatever way you want to look at it, it's their money, So I appreciate the presentation. I think we're making great strides in the midst of our challenges, and I'm just looking for a great year in 2022. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. This time, I'd like to invite Mr. Jeff Howard to come. As I spoke through this presentation tonight, I talked about how, in their wisdom, our forefathers set up a system by which we would educate children in the parish of Caddo. I think in that setup, that system, this millage system was established, and because of that, we do find ourselves in situations every few years where we have to go to the community and ask to renew a millage. What I will tell you, though, is that these millages that we are up to renew this April were actually renewed the spring before I came to the school district. So that was in the spring of 2013, and the millages did very well at the polls in the spring of 2013, and our hopes is that we will do a good enough job of presenting this information, or quality presentations of information, so that our community does again support these 3 millages. Mr. Howard will share with you that these are big. They greatly affect the operation of our system as we do it today. And again, hopefully we can present this and convince and have our community support so that we can renew these millages. Mr. Howard.
Good evening. As Dr. Gorey said, I'm going to give you some information concerning the proposed millage renewals, and then you have a chance to ask any questions you want to ask. First of all, we've talked about this a lot, but if you'll remember, the 3 main sources of revenue that we have in the district are our MFP revenues from the state, which is the per pupil funding from the state, the property tax revenues, and sales tax revenues. So when we talk about millages, what we're talking about are property tax revenues. So I know all of you are aware of that, but that's just something that you hear the word millage, and a lot of times you don't really know, exactly what we're talking about. So, okay, the proposal. We are recommending that this board approve putting these 3 millage renewals on the ballot for April 30th to give the Caddo Parish voters an opportunity to approve those to continue to fund basic operations of the district. So what is a millage? A mill is a means of assessing a property tax. 1 mill is equal to 0.1%. Another way to say that is that 1 mill equals $1 per $1,000 of assessed value. And I'll give you a little information in a little bit about how much these mean to the taxpayers' pocketbooks. The proposals that we're talking about that are before the board, these are not new millages. These are renewals. nor are they an increase in the tax rate. So that's important to note. Okay, so we're talking about 3 property tax millages that are up for renewal. These millages account for approximately 47% of the district's total property taxes. We receive about $139 million in property taxes between our general fund, capital projects fund, and debt service fund. So the millages that we're talking about is about 47% of that, which is big money, as Dr. Gorey was speaking of. We're asking the board to consider placing these on the ballot before voters at the current millage rate. That's important to note also. We're not asking to increase the millage rate at all. We're asking to place these on the ballot at the current millage rate. Okay, the first mill is the operations and maintenance mill. It's 17 mills. This millage generates approximately $31.9 million annually for our general fund. And what's that used for? It's used for just about anything you can think of, but among those, salaries and benefits, maintenance and operation of classrooms and sites, fuel, upkeep of bus fleet, curriculum and resources. If you'll recall, we talk about this all the time, that 87% of our expenses are for people, salaries and benefits. So there's no way that any of these millages will not help pay for salaries and benefits. So just that's important to keep in mind. This millage expires in 2023. The second millage we're recommending renewals, operations, maintenance, and support millage of 11.19 mills. This generates approximately $21 million annually for our general fund. And the uses are the same as the millage before, all operations of the school system, including salaries, benefits, operation of classrooms and sites, and fuel and upkeep of buses, curriculum and resources, among other things. This millage expires in 2024. Building and equipment millage is the last one, 6.82 mills. This millage generates approximately $12.6 million annually for our capital projects fund. It's used for maintenance of district facilities, upgrades to campuses, for ADA, Title IX compliance, HVAC upgrades, overall improvements to aging buildings. Anything that you will see on the capital projects project list that you approve each year could be covered by those funds generated by that millage. We feel like, as Dr. Gorey discussed earlier in his presentation, we've had good success, financial success recently, and we feel like we've been a good steward of the taxpayers' money over the last several years. And just to highlight a couple of things that are directly related to the millage, since 2011, this board in this district has reduced its millage rate by 3.43 mills. And if you go further back, since 2001, we've reduced that millage by 11.26 mills. If you'll look at one of the supplementary sheets that's at your site, at your station, we have a property tax millage history for the last 20 years. So if you're interested, that will show you the breakdown of that and show you where we have consistently reduced those millages for the taxpayers. Also, we've refinanced interest rates 10 times to save taxpayers more than $7.3 million since 2002. And that's on our government obligation bonds. Some important dates in this process. On December 14th, Dr. Gorey, if you remember at the last meeting in December, he read the announcement to you all into the minutes of the intention to discuss the millage renewals. That was something that was required to be done to keep this on time. We're on a tight timeline as far as getting this on the ballot, approved by the Bond Commission, and getting this on the ballot. Today we're having our presentation to the board. January 18th, we're asking you to vote on this to place these millage renewals on the ballot. The deadline to do that is March 7th, and the last day to register vote April 9th. Early voting starts April 16th, and election day on the 30th. Just before we close, one more piece of information that I put at your stations is just a list of all the millages that we currently have that total, you'll see there, they total 74.77 mills. and that breaks it down by general fund, capital projects, and debt service. So this time, we'll answer any questions.
I call on Board Member Ryle.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, sir. On our bond and interest has debt service fund, when was the last time that was renewed?
Well, the voters approved in, what was the year? About three or 4 years ago, the voters approved the $88.3 million for bond project for the HVAC, the buses, the security upgrades. It was 88.3 over about 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. Because we're coming to the board tonight for the fourth, on the regular agenda for the fourth installment of that, so.
Okay, so we're not worried about that debt service fund millage right now, are we?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. That's it. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ryle. Ms. Bell.
Okay, my question, question and observation. I know whenever we do a bond proposal, it's always, and the misconceptions always in the community. Number one, and I like, number one is that we definitely stress that it's not going to move your taxes up or nothing like that. That's the main thing they put, misconception. I'd like to ask you this. If the 47%, let me see the first one you said, that deal with salaries and everything, right? 47%. If that failed, what will happen? Tell me what, and I just want front lay terms, tell me. Because see, things like this, the right thing needs to be out in the public.
Right. If the two general fund millages make up 53 million in total, if we were to lose those, I mean, as we talked about, 87% of our general fund budget is salary and benefits are people related. So we would have to have less people, whatever that took. We'd have to have less people, we'd have to have less sites, there'd be that's a lot of money. That's a significant part of our general fund budget.
Okay, now you're saying less people, I'm gonna break it down for you. You're saying that layoff, closing schools and all, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and like I said, I'm gonna put it out there, lay. Now, you use those sweet words, but I'm gonna use the real words. Lay off, closing schools, no jobs, okay? These are the things that, and I get always hear, everybody against tax. We're not raising taxes. We need to make sure they understand that. We're not raising anything other than renewing what we've done. 2013, wasn't it the last time we voted for this? Barry, what was it, 2013?
Yes.
2013, it's 2022 now. And we need to let everybody know. That's all I'm asking Dr. Gorey and your staff. You're going to have to go to these centers and let them know the real truth, and that's the truth, if they don't. And it's going to affect our employees if they do not pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Mr. Rochelle.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two specific questions. Are there going to be any other items on this ballot in April? Are we going to be, so we're going to bear the burden of the cost of the, and what's the cost?
We estimate about 200,000.
About 200,000? Okay.
That's one reason for bringing if you'll notice, I mentioned that one of these renewal expires in 2024. That's one reason of combining those is to save that extra 200,000 for having to do it again for that millage.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Say that again?
That's one reason we're combining the 2023 and 24.
There you go.
All right.
To save another $200,000. Okay,
Right.
very good. And I do think that this is very critical, and I don't want to I want this presented to personally, I don't want it presented to the public in a way that, in a fear way. I don't like for people to operate out of fear or anything else. The fact of the matter is, and this goes back to something I had requested, I know that there's some cost involved, is our community gets a tremendous return on our children being educated. There's an economic impact, there's a quality of life impact, there's a lot of things that we impact through the education of our children versus them not being educated. And that's what we do. And when we look at in the region, and we look at the success that we have above every other school district in the region, we're giving a return here, and it truly is a return. I think another thing to point out is in 2003, that's when our property taxes were the highest that I believe that they've ever been, and we have reduced them over 14% since 2003. They have been reduced. They have dropped. We have done such a good job, and I'm not trying to just butter this bread either, but it should be said, is we've handled our budget so well that our debt service is impeccable. It really is impeccable. We have very little debt, especially considering the size of this governmental agency. We have very little, and it's reduced. We've reduced it so much. The millage for that is as low as it can possibly go. It can't go any lower. We've got it as low as it can possibly go. So we're managing our money very, very well, and we're going to get a little report on that here in just a minute too. But I think it's critical, and I agree with Ms. Bell, that the public understands what all has been accomplished. Yes, our district has shrunk, but guess what? So have your tax millages. Your tax burdens have been reduced. So as our student population has gone down, we realize that's a loss of money, but we've also taken that burden away from the voters and the constituents. I think it's critical. I so agree with Ms. Bell on this, that the right information be presented well, and whatever whatever I can do to help, I'm here. I'll just say that. Whatever I can do, I'll be happy to help in any form or fashion to get the word out. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Purcell. I don't know what the plan is on I hate to use the word selling it to the public, but promoting it to the public. But I hope there is a bona fide, not a scare tactic like Mr. Rochelle said. We don't want to do that. We want to do the benefits of this passing. I remember in 2019 when we had the millage renewal to secure our buses, security, and HVAC. And based upon the numbers I was given, and in response to some disinformation that was going on in one of the neighborhoods, I got a little Facebook video put on, and I got 1,000 hits. And I told folks, you have a house that's worth $150,000. If this millage does not renew, you're going to save so much money. You're going to save enough to buy another Happy Meal a year. Okay. Now this one, I know we're talking about more money, but to put it in tangible terms that the public can kind of wrap their minds around, I think would help. So whatever strategy you'll have in mind to do that, I think would be very helpful. I really
Right.
do.
And just to give you some numbers regarding that, $150,000 house, if these millages are not renewed. Now, these are more than we were talking about back then, but $262 per year. Someone with a $250,000 house, $612 per year. So.
Yeah. Compared to the benefit, it's not even, yeah, but we just got to make sure that the public realizes that. So, thank you. Anyone else at all? All right, thank you, Mr. Howard.
Okay.
Our third presentation deals with redistricting. Dr. Gorey, you want to introduce that, or?
I will, yes. This time I'll invite Mr. Floyd to come up, and he's with Data Center, and he is the group that this board selected to deal with your redistricting as it relates to reapportionment.
It's not on your screen. Just in case you want. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent and school board members and other elected and appointed officials. Does everybody have a handout? It's in the packet. With 40 years of providing redistricting services, Data Center is the most experienced redistricting company in the state. As the superintendent said, I'm Cedric Floyd, President and Chief Demographer. It's a pleasure for Data Center to provide redistricting based on the 2020 census. Of course, the 2020 census has been released. The parish of Caddo has a population of 237,848, down from 254,969 with the 2010 census, reflecting a population loss of 17,121, or 6.71%. Consistent with state law, revised statute 13:1411, the population from the 2020 census has been applied to your 12 school board districts. That is called the benchmark plan, the starting point for redistricting. The benchmark plan shows, which is your current plan, shows a deviation of 39.41%. The deviation is calculated by taking the parish population and dividing it into 12, which is 19,821. That's your ideal district size. Then you subtract the largest district population, which is District 9, 24,830, from your smallest district population, which is District 5, 17,018, and that is 7,812. And then you divide that into your ideal district size, 19,821, and that's how you get the 39.41%. That's a mathematical term. You subtract your largest district from your smallest district, which is 7,812, and you divide it into your ideal district size. And again, like I said, it's 39.41%. The goal of redistricting is to have the difference between your smallest district and your largest district is 10%. And that's a federal rule, 10% deviation. Looking before you, Data Center has applied the 2020 census to your current plan that was adopted after the 2010 census. And District 1 has a population of 20,214, District 2, 18,931, District 3, 17,292, District 4, 18,656, District 5, 17,018, District 5, 17,018, District 6, 18,772, District 7, 17,845, District 8, 20,589, District 9, 24,830, District 10, 21,893, District 11, 20,608, and District 12, 21,200. Sometimes when you're redistricting, some people say plus or minus 5%. And you will find that within the range of plus or minus 5%, you have 4 districts, which is within that plus or minus 5%, which is districts 1, 2, 8, and 11. In the districts that's below that are districts 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the 3 districts above that 5% range is 9, 10, and 12. Determining deviation is the first step when it comes down to redistricting. The next step when it comes down to redistricting is criteria, which is the second page of the handout. These are general criteria that's used when it comes down to redistricting. Population equality, I went through. Compliance with the Voting Rights Act. Each district shall be compact as possible, contiguous. Incumbency shall be considered. Consideration shall be given to natural, geographical, and political boundaries. Number 7, consideration shall be given to keep intact communities with established ties of common interest, association, whether historical, racial, economic, ethnic, religious, or others. And you have some state law requirements when school board redistrict, and they are that state law governing split precincts and precinct splits has come from revised statute 17:71.3E2. No precinct divided into more than 2 districts, and no school board district shall contain more than 3 divided precincts. Redistricting plan must be adopted 4 weeks prior to qualifying, which is June 22nd, 2022. And qualifying for school board this year is July the 20th through 22nd, and the primary election will be November the 8th. Also, I'm offering a resolution indicating that your current plan exceeds 10%, and it's in your packet, and I'll read it. Caddo Parish School Board Resolution. Whereas the 2020 U.S. Census count has been completed, and PL 94:171 redistricting data was delivered to the state of Louisiana in August of 2020. Whereas the Caddo Parish School Board, under Louisiana Revised Statutes 33:1411, must make a determination whether redistricting is necessary with the 2020 U.S. Census population. And whereas the Caddo Parish School Board authorized a study to calculate the 2020 U.S. Census population in each school board election district. Whereas the current school board member election districts have the following, and I already went through that. Whereas the overall deviation is 39.41%, which is close to 4 times above the legal limit. Now therefore be it resolved that the Caddo Parish School Board hereby declares that redistricting of the school board member election district must commence to adjust the district populations to be within 10% deviation of the ideal district size of 19,421. Be it finally resolved that the resolution shall become effective immediately upon the adoption by the Caddo Parish School Board. Going forward, Data Center will meet with individual school board members or in groups here at your office building with a monitor and begin to look at options, drafting a redistricting plan. And at the end of the day, your 2020 redistricting plan would be reflective of the school board, reflective of the parish. And like I said, we look forward to working with you. We've done this for 40 years. We've done redistricting for many school boards, and we are doing redistricting for your Caddo Parish Commission. We had a presentation yesterday. So I'll take any questions or comments you may have.
Chair recognizes Mr. Rowell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. Did I understand you right? You said that we will have a meeting to get together on this redistricting review, the board will?
Yes, it could be individually or in groups, but of course, once you have 6 or 7, it'd have to be a workshop called. But I'm available to meet individually or in groups, or could have a workshop with a special meeting be called to work toward understanding redistricting, work toward redistricting plan.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed on your benchmark plan here that we have districts 8, well, actually 9 and 10 and 12 in that area, and that's more or less, isn't that the southern part of the parish? Yeah, that you got some major challenges here. I mean, one thing I was wondering, now, this is not to throw this out to say we want to do it or anything, but a number of years ago, this board consisted of 18 members that served 6-year terms. Do we ever foresee, because of the changing in the population and the demographics, this board ever going to another number other than 12?
The legal limit is 15, and you would have to do that, during this redistricting process. But the legal limit is 15.
So that would be something the board would have to do if they wanted to do it. So,
correct.
In other words, being 12, we're left alone, basically like we are.
Correct.
And you've got to fix it.
Correct.
Okay.
And I look forward to
Okay.
adjusting the district lines and coming up with a plan at the end of the day.
Okay,
We'll
thank
have
you,
a plan.
sir.
We'll have a
Appreciate
plan.
it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ryle. Mr. Rochelle.
Mr. President, thank you for explaining the 39.41. That was one of my questions. I was trying to figure out where that number came from. It's interesting how how somebody decided that that's how they were going to come up with to use that percentage. Is the two things that I would like to have is, because our districts are precinct related, because you can't split precincts up too many times and have 3 different districts or 3 different elected districts cutting a precinct into 3 portions. I'd love to get a precinct map, okay? And really and truly, just for the whole parish.
Okay.
Okay, not just mine. It'd be nice to see all of it, because we're going to be going through this process, and it looks like that this chiseling is going to, I've been through this before, and it's going to chisel. It's just going to all the way across, so there's going to be a lot of that happens. And then along with the precinct maps is to get just the district maps of what they currently are for each school board member, so that we can, everybody, and there may be this readily available somewhere, but I would love that. And the precinct maps, I'm not real sure how you're going to go about doing those, because you can't just do one huge piece of paper on that, but, something that would work to be able to go through it. And so in your process of going through this, and my guess is you've done this so long, you probably already have a pretty good idea of what things are going to look like a little bit, some of it general. At what point in time do you think that you would be prepared to sit down with me or any other board member here and say, this is kind of what we're looking at?
I have not sketched out a plan. I wanted to meet with each school board member who desired to meet before moving forward, so I can understand the neighborhood, the districts, and at that point, I was going to begin the process. I know at the end of the day, it's going to be a redistricting plan, but I have not begun to develop the give and take that it's going to take. So in the month of January, I'm prepared to work with the superintendent's office and to schedule meetings here at the office on a monitor. I'll bring my mapping system, and we'll be able to go through it, and I can print maps of the precincts and print maps of the current districts and move forward, but I'm prepared to on-site to move lines back and forth, individually, in groups, or a workshop meeting that's called by, by the president and the superintendent.
Okay, with your experience, what's the best way for you to do this? Do you want to meet with 2 or 3 board members? Because we have to be careful not to have a quorum or even to be perceived as a rolling quorum. What is the best way that you would like to proceed with this board?
I guess I wanted to get everybody's thoughts about it. People who share adjacent districts, at the beginning, to meet to see, your district, who's next to you. And we have districts that need to gain, we have districts that need to lose. Sometimes the districts in the middle will have to move because you have districts below and above. It just so happened this morning, and that's my wife and I, 30 years, we were down with Sabine Polish jury, and they had to have major surgery in terms of being able to domino effect. Sometimes it's like that you have to come within the range, you got to be reflective, you have to move what you need to move. And if in fact that you have districts with above the average in the south side, then you're going to have to move. The bottom line, you'll see the precinct population and the demographics of the parish, and you have to move it to make sure that all 12 districts at the end of the day have 10% deviation.
I'm going to ask it, is again, how would you like to proceed? Well, no, he does this for a living. I certainly don't do this for a living, and he knows what works and what doesn't work. And Because if you say, you know, it would be nice if we take, looking at the map, we meet with these three, and then we meet with these three, and we meet with these three. And I'm just making up an example, okay? Is, because you, this is what you do for a living.
100%. What I'll do is that I'll send to the superintendent's office the groupings, and we'll go from that. Right.
If I could jump in, I probably can help you out a little bit, Mr. Shell. A little bit of our conversation thus far has really been, it's our first opportunity to assess where the board is with how you want to do this. What our plan would be is after this meeting, we'll talk to him about how can we schedule meeting places, and I think it'll be pretty obvious just from conversation, those board members that want to meet in groups versus those that want to meet alone. What my office was going to do was offer that to anyone to schedule a time alone or schedule a time with a group. And then, you know, Mr. Floyd has been, you know, most accommodating that he will come, and we'll set up a couple of days and just make that happen.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, but in all of his conversations.
You're the I hate to say that, but you kind of are the captain of the boat. You've done this before. We can maneuver, when it's all said and done, we'll deal with the aftermath, as you disappear.
We will meet how many times it takes to get a working relationship established, and at the end of the day, have a plan.
That'll be great. Okay.
Thank you.
And one thing, and I hadn't done this before, but in talking, you know, we know that there are certain board members, because you touch each other, that are going to be more inclined to need to talk together versus talking to someone who's totally on the other side of town. So we'll certainly, my office will accommodate setting that up at the board's pleasure.
Okay. Mr. Trammell.
Mr. President, you keep using the term, the phrase or whatever, planned deviation. Will you explain that to me?
What happened back in, I think it's 1962, Reynolds versus Sims and Baker versus Carr, that the Supreme Court had said that it was dealing with congressional districts, that after each census, that each congressperson has to represent just about the same number of people. And you've had cases from the U.S. Supreme Court dealing with legislatures, school boards, and all local governments. And that's the established formula that you take the total population of the unit, divide it into the number of members, and that becomes your ideal district size. And there's mathematical deviation, and you subtract the largest district from the smallest district, and you get that count, and you divide it into the ideal district size, and that's deviation. So if you're within 10%, you know, local government, you're all right. Sometimes when it comes down to congressional, as small as possible, might be 1 or 2%, but acceptable within 10% range. And that's the difference between the smallest and the largest district of 1,982, and that represents 10%.
Okay, so.
And you had that at your last 2010, your plan was within 10%.
Okay.
It just so happened in the 10-year time, you've had population loss and population gains, and now you're back up to 39.41%. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now I'm feeling a little light with this, so I'm going to just ask you.
Okay.
You mean to say, Barry got all these people right here, and I don't need but 1,165 people? I just can't go over there.
It'd have to be contiguous.
I got you.
That's one of the criteria, it has to be contiguous, meaning that have to be solid. You can't hop and skip. Yes, ma'am.
I know you, I'm
Yes,
just
ma'am.
mad. All right,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Trammell? Okay.
You mean to say.
Ms. Green.
Thank you so much for coming today, sir. I probably have been waiting on you for a really long time.
Okay.
Couple of questions here as it relates to our deviation numbers. Looks like we have, you know, all of the negatives almost right there together. The people who are the population is declining, starting with me. Those are the people that probably need to meet together first, right?
Well, you can either way in terms of meet together, but you're going to have to move out. You know.
Yeah, well, eventually, we're going to all have to talk to one another, because if I'm right at almost 4.5, I'm District 2. However, my neighbor next door is way under, which is gonna push me in a whole nother, I mean, you know, he has to get his, I should say they have to get their numbers from somewhere. So do you have any idea what this is gonna look like?
No, I don't. Like I said, I'm waiting to talk to each one of y'all before I begin the task, but at the end of the day, I know it's going to be a redistricting plan that's going to be 10%, and it's going to adhere to the state and federal law. I know at the end of the day, that's going to be done. I don't know exactly what route, if, just say, 20% of your district got to move to another district, then you have to have 35% more because you're already low. So it's going to be some of that. I can't determine because I'm telling you that I took the time to apply your current precincts with the 2020 census, and I'm here today to present the benchmark plan. And looking at options, what to do, I have not begun. I was just here to present what you currently, your foundation, what your starting point today. But I know at the end of the day, we're going to have a redistricting plan.
This to me, it doesn't, I thought a little bit, my thinking was a little bit more positive than what I'm looking at now. So let me ask you this, and I normally don't like to compare myself, this governing body with any other governing body, but since you did the commission district, because we just about overlap, was that was it a strain, a process, was it a hard process?
Well, that deviation is larger than yours, if you want to ask that.
Oh, okay.
That deviation is a little bit larger there. I think I have it here in terms of, that deviation was, I think 41 or so, 42. Yeah.
Oh, okay, just a little bit more than
Yeah,
us.
a little bit,
Well, I guess.
We have a few districts the same, but that deviation is a little bit larger than yours.
I guess I shouldn't complain too much. My grandmother said, leave well enough alone. Okay, I mean, this, I don't know. I don't know. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for coming, too. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Ms. Bell?
I've been waiting on this also. Last time, 10 years ago, I didn't understand, and I got bumped and didn't realize it. So this time, I'm making sure that I listen and understand what's going on. I'm going to have to, because I did get bumped. What I need to do, I am agreement with you, we meet with me by myself, because I want you to explain every bit of redistricting.
I look forward to it.
And then I can get with somebody, but otherwise, I'm not meeting with anybody until I learn about this, because like I said, I got burned last time, okay? And the deviation, I'm concerned about that. I mean, the deviation is all right with me, but I still don't understand. I know I cannot go, District 12 can't go to District 1 and pull nobody because we too far apart, almost.
You don't
But-
know people.
Huh?
You're over. You're a growing district.
Huh?
You're a growing district. You got to lose people.
Huh? Oh, I know, I'm fine, but I'm saying, last time I thought I was fine too, till somebody got greedy and pulled from me.
But they had to.
I know they said they had to, but they didn't tell me because I didn't understand. You see, I didn't understand.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought it was fine, and when some of my people went to the poll to vote, your name wasn't on there. I was shocked too, you see, because I didn't know. I don't mind telling nobody, I don't know nothing, but I will learn before you leave here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I am, Dr. Goree, I'm setting up as soon as possible, one-on-one with him.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Mr. Albritton?
Thank you, Mr. President. We keep talking about the districts, and then we talk about the fact that you can't divide up a precinct in these movements. Is that on a precinct-by-precinct basis? In other words, to me, I thought we would redistrict, and then you would have a change in precincts to serve those districts. So you have to maintain the same precincts that we currently have?
No, you're gonna change, you're gonna add new precincts or some subtract precincts, yes.
Okay.
It's just a question of because you're the school board and not the parish commission, you're limited with splitting precincts and have how many split precincts you can have in a district. But you're going to add new precincts because you're going to have to add territory or take territory away from a district. But some will be status quo, but most will have to adjust.
As far as the movement, is that by precinct, or is it just a population count? In other words, would you look at a precinct population, compare it to another precinct population within the same district? Is that what drives it? Or is it just, if the precincts are out, it's just total population?
I'm looking at total population,
Okay.
and then how that precinct is going to impact the 10%. You know, in
Okay.
terms of that, that will determine if it got
population of the precinct.
yeah, that's going to determine if it needs to be split, if it's going to make that district too large.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Albritton, thank you. Mr. Rob Eskew, I'm going to defer to our attorney for just a second. Oh, okay.
On Ms. Green, you mentioned that you had done the Caddo Commission.
I'm doing it.
Doing it. Now,
I did the-
if I remember right, now, I know my district is exactly the same as District 1 in Caddo Commission. Are we the same as they are? Districts, the way there's,
Not all 12.
okay,
Some.
because I knew we were.
Yeah.
Mine was.
Not all 12, I think.
Okay, that's all I need.
It could be 3 or
Okay.
4,
They're
different.
the same. Yeah, they're
Okay, thank
different.
you, sir.
Uh-huh.
I'm through.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Abrams.
So the board is, you're asking some of the same questions associated with whether or not they'll meet together with you or not with you. The contract that we signed, or that the board signed with Data Center, basically says that he will meet with you individually if you want to, or he'll meet with persons together if you want to, or whichever way. So the contract provides that. So if anyone wants to meet by themselves, they can, and he don't have to. That's a part of the agreement that the board actually signed with Data Center, and they agreed to do that. And that was a part of their proposal, actually, to do that. So you don't have to worry about it. If you want to meet separately, you can, and he'll make those provisions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Abrams. I'm not mistaken, this requires to be put on the agenda, is that correct? So I would entertain a motion for that to be done.
Well, I think you'll wait until we go through the agenda.
Okay. So we'll wait until we get to that portion of the agenda. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with the school board. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, it's time to establish our agenda for the next meeting, which is January the 18th. I'm going to defer to Dr. Gorey to delineate our items on the agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I will now read through our proposed agenda. Item 6.01, personnel recommendations, certified and classified. Item 6.02, administrative contract renewals. Item 7.01, capital projects and construction. Items 8.01, property bus rental request. Items 8.02, to consider and take action with respect to adopting a resolution authorizing the incurrence of debt and issuance of $9,500,000 of general obligation school bond series 2020 of the parish-wide school district of Caddo Parish, Louisiana, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Item 8.04, consideration of approval of modified right-of-way and easement. Item 8.04, consideration of resolution and extract of resolution request for Louisiana State Mineral Board advertisement. So here, 8.05, to consider and take action with respect to adopting a resolution ordering and calling a special election to be held in the parish-wide school district of Caddo Parish, Louisiana, to authorize the renewal of ad valorem tax therein, making application to the State Bond Commission, and providing for other matters in connection therewith. Item 13.01, which is student readmission appeals hearing. We do have 2, and the families are in agreement. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any questions before we We entertain a motion to establish the proposed agenda and consent agenda. Anybody? Mr. Rochelle?
Are you going to do one item at a time, or are we just jumping in?
Okay. I'm not going to go into these in fine detail again, but 6.01 personnel resignations, 6.02
So that's, wait a minute, so consent first?
Yes, you want to take it on consent? Okay. Administrative contract renewal, 6.02. 7.01 capital projects. Okay. 8.01 property bus rental request. Consent. 8.02, I'll not read that again. Anybody consent or not? Okay.
The bids do not need to go on consent on 7.01 because they're not all in yet.
Okay.
We don't have all the bids in yet.
So take 7.01 off consent, okay?
We'll get the bids in. We don't have all the bids in, only two bids
Okay,
in.
okay. We'll take 7.01 off consent. 8.03, right-of-way and easement. Consent, okay. 8.04, the mineral board advertisement. Consent. 8.05, the special election to renew ad valorem taxes. Consent, okay. And 13.01, consent, okay. Now,
Mr. Chair, we need to add.
We have to add the resolution.
yes, we would entertain a motion to add the,
Yes, yes, ma'am.
They are.
yes.
What we gonna say?
You gonna push your button? You gonna add the resolution?
What's the name of that? To add to the agenda.
We need to establish it, yeah.
Wait a minute, you gotta add that to it.
We
There you
gotta
go.
add that item.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be,
Move to add to the agenda the Caddo Parish School Board resolution.
Hang on, if you'll push your button there, miss.
Okay. You got it?
Or I can do it for you here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, move to add an item to the agenda regarding the redistricting data resolution for the Caddo Parish School Board. Is that it, Rich?
You just need to state it and be added.
Uh-huh.
Then you're going to vote on it.
Oh, yeah.
8.06.
It's
Do we
gonna be
have a-
8.06.
Do we need a second? Okay.
Just add
And that will
item.
be item number 8.06, I'm assuming?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're going to call on Mr. Abrams to comment.
You done? Was that it? That's all we had.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Ms. Bell,
They can put it on consent if you ask them
Mm-hmm.
I'm not there.
you're on? Okay. We're going to put that on consent then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. And that will be 8.06, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
to. Just read through the things that are on the consent agenda.
Okay. Consent agenda, 6.01, 6.02, 8.01, 7.01 is not, rather. 8.02 on consent, 8.03, 8.04, 8.05, and newly added 8.06, as well as 13.01.
Okay. Oh, now you need to read yours, Daddy.
Need a motion.
Somebody, Mr. Rochelle?
No, no.
Yeah.
I think he had something else.
I think we should have our bond attorney speak. He's been,
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, he was gracious enough to drive
All the miles.
5 hours to get here.
Well, let us finish the agenda, okay?
Thank you very much.
I would appreciate if he just had a couple of minutes just to state
He said happy New Year.
Okay.
of what he's doing. and-
Yes, we've got a motion that we need to
You ready
to
to
deal
read?
with. Ms.
Move-
Bell?
Move to establish a proposed agenda and consent agenda for January 18, 2022 Caddo Parish School Board meeting.
Mr. Ryle seconds. Let's vote. Now we need to approve the proposed agenda and consent
We don't have
agenda.
the vote thing up here. Mine's not up, it's not up yet.
You gotta
Yeah.
go back to the original. video.
Mine's not coming up. Oh,
No, you need to go back to your feature and go back to the,
go to my feature again? I got the meeting. Go back to feature.
and go back to the meeting we're in.
I went to the meeting we in, that's what I'm saying. And it didn't come up. I don't think I'm on there yet. They haven't got me on there yet.
Not the proposed agenda. You go to the executive session.
I did, okay, let me go back.
Yeah, that
Okay. Let me try that. Okay, that's where I was, but it still didn't come up. It's still, that's established, what that do? That's not that? Okay, I'm gonna fix, I think y'all need to, okay, I'll go back there again. Got you?
Now just
There we-
click that one. There you go.
Okay, I got it. Still not doing, I'm going back to the wrong
No,
one.
no, 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 no.
Okay. That's what Dr. Golden did, that's not the right one.
No, that's the executive committee work session. That's the right one.
Okay.
Is the vote still open?
We're just waiting on the executive committee to vote.
Okay, what's wrong, babe? Something going on with, huh?
Just hold your hand up.
We have a verbal
Yes.
on that we're having
Yes.
glitches?
Yes, it's something wrong with my.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
Go back and do it again? Oh, you want me to read the second one?
yes, we need the approval. I need to push your button there. Miss Dottie.
Your microphone button.
Okay.
Let's see here. All right,
Okay,
go ahead.
move to approve the proposed agenda and consent agenda for January 18th, 2022 Caddo Parish School Board meeting as presented.
Didn't we already do that?
No,
We
I
did the
did this one.
establish.
They established, this is
You don't-
approved.
No,
Don't worry about that.
no, see, wait a minute.
Gave it two.
Okay.
Okay, that's it,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
That's okay?
Yeah.
All right. Now what I do? I'm gonna have to do verbal again? Yeah, mine won't come up?
I'm waiting on mine too.
Yeah, waiting on yours too, huh? Yes.
Make sure you have to call the audience.
Yes,
I think
yes.
they may have to just put out, make sure we in here. Make sure we in. Yours not up neither.
If it's just executive committee voting, we can do that verbally coming up.
We can do it verbal? Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, all right. Now it's our opportunity to poll the audience. I don't have any cards.
You got one?
Jackie Lansdale, if you would like to come to the podium.
It's just like it's coming up, yours coming up.
Yes. Give me just a second here. The Caddo Parish School Board welcomes your input and comments as we poll the audience regarding items that are the subject of the upcoming board meeting.
Yeah, I gotta get rid of it.
If you would like to speak regarding an item that is the subject of the upcoming board meeting, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then make your remarks to the entire board. You do not need to fill out a card. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. A time clock on the monitors and screens will help you to be aware of your time. When the time runs out, your time is up. It is the board's policy not to respond individually to members of the audience. When appropriate, the board may refer concerns to the staff to be addressed. As this is a public meeting, we ask you to refrain from referring to personnel by name or incident. In accordance with school board policy, derogatory statements about or directed at a school board member, any employee, or any other person shall not be allowed. That being said, thank you, Ms. Lansdale.
Yes, I'm Jackie Lansdale, I'm president of River
Hang on.
26 Line Avenue, Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm not speaking into it, I'm
There you
sorry.
go, there you go.
And,
Dawn Jordan, President of the Caddo Association of Educators.
yeah, we rise to let the board and administration know that we stand in support of the millage renewal and are committed to do whatever is necessary to make sure that we are successful. We recognize the importance that this is not only to boys and girls, but to our teachers and our staff members and to our community at large. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's great, thank you.
All right, any others? Okay.
great.
Any announcements? Please state your desire to talk by pushing your button. Anyone have an announcement? Ms. Bell?
Yes, I'd like to invite everybody to the memorial service that they are having for Coach Tony Rose on the 15th at 12 o'clock at Huntington. And I'd like to thank all the board members for voting to name the football field in his honor. He was a very, very great man, and he did a lot, so thank you so much.
Any other announcements? Well, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay, there we go. Move to adjourn, and, oh, wait.
Made by Dottie Bell, seconded by Steve Ryle. All those in favor, vote accordingly.
Say aye.
If you're against, you can stay here.
Yeah, let's go.
Thank y'all very much.
I'm laughing about that.